It's really great to be here. I think that this is the last session before all the reception, so we'll make sure everybody gets out on time. My name is Michael Collins. I'm a vice president at JFF, and JFF, we're a national nonprofit, and we work to transform our nation's education and training system. And I'm here with some amazing colleagues. They're going to tell you who they are in a bit, but I wanted to start just with a little setup. So I'm not a technologist, so why am I here talking about the role of tech in racial economic equity and addressing the wealth gap? So why am I here? So at JFF, I've been at the organization, I joined in 2004. We do workforce development, education policy, and I led our post-secondary practice. So I don't know about your 2020, but my 2020 was pretty horrible. And I remember one day kind of reeling from the press of what had happened with George Floyd and other unarmed kind of black Americans, the pandemic. I walked upstairs to my office and I have an office in the attic, and I got a phone call. And it was from our CEO, Maria Flynn, and she also was reeling from what was happening in the press. And she said, we have to do something. JFF, we are all about kind of education and training. When we're looking at what's happening to black folks in the labor market, we're seeing kind of that low unemployment rate that we saw before the pandemic kind of broke out. We saw that it masked that a lot of black people were working in low-wage jobs, right? Jobs that were in harm's way of AI and technology and automation. And she asked if I would lead the organization in an initiative to address that. And so I said that I would, and so we called it the Racial Economic Equity Initiative. And as I thought about what we needed to be doing, one of the things that was pretty obvious was how do we take this challenge of looking at kind of the condition of black workers in the labor market and strengthen their position. And I'm not a technologist, but it was pretty obvious that the role of technology and access to digital and IT careers could be a big deal. And so I started to think about what that would look like, and I met a wonderful person. One day I was at my desk, and I saw a LinkedIn, and it was Gwyneth, who you'll meet. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. And she told me what she did and said, hey, we should have a conversation. I think we might have some mutual interests. And so, Gwyneth, do you want to tell us who you are and maybe describe a little bit of our conversation and share a little bit about what you do?
Yep, happy to. So I'm Gwyneth. I lead our social impact work for Comcast, NBCUniversal. Joined the team just over 2 years ago now. And at Comcast, we've long been committed to digital equity. We believe that is really the access point to the digital economy. And so from an investment perspective, we've really focused our efforts over the last 18 months or so, really, and focused in three main areas. One, really high quality digital skills. Two, pathways to employment for careers in media and tech. And three, in investing in underrepresented entrepreneurs. And I think at the heart of all of that was a real intentional focus on equity and really wanting to rethink kind of the way that we invested, making sure we did so in the most authentic way possible and in the most equitable way possible. And so when we started thinking about investing in workforce and pathways, JFF, of course, is top of mind. They've long been at this work, and I had been following Michael's leadership on LinkedIn, as he says, and I saw the post of his new role, and I thought, well, this just is perfect. And so reached out and wanted to understand kind of his vision for the work, and I don't think it took too much, a few conversations, and we got things started, and fortunate to have these two fine humans join the effort as well.
So we'll bring them into the conversation. So I'm a public policy professional, had been running post-secondary. All of a sudden, I'm thinking about how to create access and opportunity in digital and tech. And I was like, I better meet some people who know something about this. And in real kind of honesty and candor, while JFF wanted to redouble our commitment to racial equity, we are a white-led organization, and we thought it was really important to seek out kind of the counsel of black leadership in this space. And I came across an amazing group of professionals. We developed an advisory committee, and Dwana is on that committee, and Michael's on that committee. And so I'm going to maybe ask Dwana to share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll go to Michael, and then we'll jump into some conversation.
Such a complex question of who I am and what I do. But I'm Dwana Franklin Davis. I'm the CEO of Reboot Representation. Our mission is to double the number of Black, Latina, and Native American women graduating with computing degrees by 2025. So Michael had mentioned he's not a technologist. I definitely identify as a technologist. So prior to coming to Reboot 2.5 years ago, my goodness, I worked for a large financial services tech company leading global technology teams and have an amazing journey with regards to access and exposure to become a technologist.
Awesome. And Michael.
Hey, everybody. Michael Ellison, CEO, one of the co-founders of CodePath. And CodePath is focusing on diversifying the nation's most competitive technical roles. By about 2030, we'd like to diversify the most competitive entry-level technical roles in the country. And the vehicle for change is by changing what's being taught, how it's being taught across 2-year and 4-year college computer science programs all across the country. We're currently working in over 70 colleges and universities, training professors. While the courses are operating, we're doing grading, student support, changing multiple years of what that course student experience looks like. Prior to CodePath, I've been tech entrepreneur, nonprofit entrepreneur, starting at the age of 19. I was a founding board member for Women Who Code. I was in an effort to try to figure out how to scale impact, got involved in different tech startups, had a company that was acquired for a little over $3 billion back in 2020. So was incredibly fortunate, but also come from a background similar to many of the students that we work with. I was low income, rural Maine, single mother household. We were homeless at times when we were growing up. So, very much I'm a member of the population we're also trying to serve and help.
So that's what brings us to the conversation. I wanted to jump into specifically what we want to talk about, and that really is about the biggest challenges and opportunities that we see. And I want to go back to Dwana and Michael. One of the things that we thought was really important to do with the advisory committee is to get their thinking on some of the biggest obstacles, some of the biggest challenges, and then also some of the opportunities. So we had several convenings and connected one-on-one to learn kind of from their perspective what some of those challenges are. Dwana, I'm wondering if you would mind starting us off on, what are some of the biggest challenges that we face in creating access and opportunity for Black learners and workers in digital and IT, both, professional, personal, if you want, however you'd like to attack those challenges. And then we'll go to Michael.
Yeah, I approach everything from the lens of my lived experience as well as all of the hats that I've worn. And I think that lends to how I can solve for or help approach an issue, and definitely do that with regards to how we have looked at the advisory committee. So I'm from Chicagoland. I grew up in the suburbs, an amazing suburb, amazing education, and as I was going along that journey, I was always first, only, or different. And what that surroundings and my upbringing didn't take from me was the fact that my family were technologists before that was a thing. And the fact that my father worked for Atari and we had Pac-Man everything when I was little and growing up. And so I was exposed to technology in a way that many students or kids weren't, especially Black and brown kids. And I knew how to take motherboards out of a gaming system because that's how we changed let's just sum it up and say I had an amazing exposure to technology. Fast forward, I'm in high school and I'm taking programming classes. I'm not going to date myself and tell you which programming class I was taking. And my mom found a class for me in Chicago at IIT for me to take another programming class. And so I clearly have this interest and affinity for this, but never once was I asked to take advanced placement computer science. I took no AP classes. I go on to Purdue University, major in computer science, changed my major my junior year, not because I couldn't, not because I didn't have the skill set, but because it was lonely. And I saw no one that looked like me. By the time there were 4 Black people that entered my freshman year, and by the end of my freshman year, I was the only one that went to sophomore year as a computer science major. So I have a business degree because they had a lot more fun in the business school, as it appeared. And thankfully, me changing my major did not lend to me not having a career in tech. I had an amazing journey and success through tech, but not without challenges and all the challenges that many of you probably have heard from throughout the day. So I bring that lens and experience also with the fact that at Reboot, we are very focused on data. We're very focused on, I say, I'm always the one in the room saying, okay, I'm gonna need you to disaggregate that data by race and gender. And if I'm talking to my corporate partners, I also need you to do that with regards to career level and function. As I'm talking to our grantee partners, can we also look at region and schools? And so I'm the constant reminder of let's collect all the data disaggregated by race and gender. And so access, exposure, opportunity are foundation to the original question that you asked. But also, we need to be able to see ourselves in the places that we strive to be. And if children, Black children, don't see themselves, or they don't even know what that possibility is. In my early story, my entire family's in tech, and so all I knew was tech. And I didn't know that it wasn't normal for people, and even to this day, my husband jokes because he's in finance. I meet people and I automatically assume they're in tech. And he's like, Dwana, not everybody's in tech. And it's a weird surprise because there's not that many Black and brown people in tech, and I didn't realize that outside of my immediate circle. So again, what is that representation that we can expose all of our students to?
Awesome. Michael, sense of challenges?
Yeah, so first off, just some of the framing. We are focused on software engineering, and I think over the past couple of years, since George Floyd and others, we've seen a lot of organizations. I've seen a lot of organizations that will go to Black and brown communities, and then they focus on, say, the lowest level, entry-level IT roles, which maybe they're barely getting a role. There may not be a path to upward mobility. And we think of it being a critical component from a racial equity standpoint to focus on the pathways that lead to influence and power. So hence, software engineering, can you lead engineering teams? Are you going to be starting the next tech companies? Are you going to be the candidates for venture capitalists to invest in? So that, from our standpoint, is one reason we focus so much on software engineering. Now, talking about the barriers that we see there, so prior to becoming a nonprofit, we were just training senior engineers inside of major technology companies, created Airbnb's first ever engineer onboarding program, and redesigned Facebook's global engineer onboarding program. To this day, we do a lot of internal training with a whole bunch of major technology companies. And we were shocked at one point when a lot of students from Stanford started to try to get into our courses for professional engineers and be like, why do you want to take our iOS course? You got like the nation's top-rated iOS course at the Stanford campus. But we saw that even at Stanford, they were not learning what was expected on the job inside of these major technology companies. And if it's not working for one of the top CS programs in the country, it made us wonder what was happening for the long tail, all the different schools. And we started to realize that you can graduate straight A and in a CS program, and then you don't know how to build mobile applications, web applications. You're not having technical interviewing courses, which is very different than the actual computer science curriculum. Imagine if you're majoring in linguistics and people are like, hey, can you speak French? And you're like, well, no, I can't. Well, didn't you learn in school? No, I didn't learn in school. And that's often what we're expecting. And the challenges are more pronounced. Then the more the school doesn't have that top ranking, then it's harder and harder to be able to pass that. And in addition to this gap with what's being taught versus what's needed to succeed, you also have the issue of our education system often being designed to filter people out versus filter them in, not giving them the confidence and sense of belonging from day one, from freshman year. And you'll see shocking stats like 80% plus of underrepresented minorities dropping out of CS programs. And then you see, because of this gap, even more shocking stats of, in 2019, of Black computer science graduates, only 8% becoming software engineers. So you made it through the entire pathway, and yet you still can't get the job opportunity. And so we look at the problem, we look at the approach, is how do we change the default path in education? So freshman year, could we take a multiple pathways approach that's personalized, where it's designed to meet you where you are, so regardless of what school you're at, then you have the support, you have the sense of belonging in the community, that you're persisting. Can we make sure that we are embedding in the classrooms across colleges and universities the skills required for you to not just be able to get in the door, but be able to be confident, to be able to thrive. And then it's not just schools, it's also employers. And employers, they look for different signals, and they're as risk averse as they possibly can be about who they are, trying to hire. So, what tools? We talk about credentials. We talk about all these different things that we're trying to provide people opportunity to get their foot in the door. But at the end of the day, the resume and looking at the school that you went to, or looking at about your past job experience or lack thereof, that is filtering a lot of young people out. And so, from the employer side of things, what is the low friction, high scale solution to get people hired based on the skills and competencies versus based on their pedigree? So that's how I frame kind of, and not everything, but then a big part of where we're focused on.
So go ahead, Gwyneth.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really, it's incumbent upon companies like a Comcast to really rethink our ways of recruiting and hiring and advancing, and just be really intentional. I'd say a huge shift has occurred within our own company. I can't speak for others, but tremendous intentionality. I think just the investments that we are making in all three of your organizations, not being done in a silo through our community impact team off over here on the side, but as part of our overall commitment, and bringing in our talent organizations, bringing in our, we are part of the DE&I team, and so I think it really takes that commitment on behalf of the employer. To your point, we have a long way to go, I recognize, but we are certainly headed down that path.
So you mentioned a lot of challenges. One of the things that surprised me when I started working with the advisory committee, when I was asking about challenges, I thought that the conversation would index mostly on tech, but the conversation was really much more broad. And one of the shocking things for me was that I think that we framed it all like problem, and you all really encouraged us to think kind of with an asset frame. And I'm curious, we identified many things all the way from, kind of strong educational, kind of foundation, making sure that people had awareness. You mentioned issues around kind of, social capital, mentorship. I was really shocked at the breadth, and I'm just wondering, it's a multifaceted, kind of challenge. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of our levers, any thoughts there? Michael, you would encourage us to kind of focus. What are we trying to get done? So I'm just curious.
Doesn't sound like him at all.
What numbers by what year? And what are the strategies? Well, actually, I think that a common element across K through Gray and connected to the whole, at the end of the day, you want people to have jobs. There's lots of different training organizations doing things in different ways. And the first question that I'm asking is what's the infrastructure? What's the consistency at scale? What's the communication and collaboration across different organizations that if there's a training organization over here, like Hidden Genius, and then there's another organization over here, then how do employers at the end of the day make sense of those different signals? Because they've been working with students for years, and they know which ones are a good fit for what, but the employers may not trust that. And so I think one of the keys is the infrastructure that could provide access to the right data to do I would say, a more curated matching that's in the best interest of everyone. And then also, and we were kind of chatting about this earlier, but I love the idea of multiple organizations coming together to build leverage. And then they can kind of kindly, politely, help to encourage companies to work a little bit better on their terms because they've developed more scale.
Absolutely. And Dwana, you always were kind of encouraging us to think about the unique challenges that women face in access to digital and tech. In terms of kind of priorities there, any thoughts about kind of what Reboot, really thinks is a very powerful lever?
Absolutely. So it's been said several times throughout the day, but recognizing that all women are not a monolith, and that we can we can't say one sweeping thing that will say, this is going to solve it for women. And having something, an initiative, a program, an effort be specific and intentional. And whatever that means with regards to the moment or that specific program, but saying, okay, this is what exactly I'm trying to solve for. So one of the things that we definitely look at, my recent blog is do not say women and women of color, because it insinuates that women of color are not women. Again, being specific and intentional, what is it that you're trying to solve for, or who are you trying to address with whatever the solution is that you're trying to provide?
Yeah, the other thing, and then we'll move to some opportunities. The other thing that struck me was we're trying to attack this from so many different angles. So Ami Eubanks-Davis, who's the CEO of Braven, is a part of the advisory committee, and Ami focuses on 4-year. There were other folks that focused on 2-year. I actually recommended to Gwyneth, I was like, we've got to increase access. How about, kind of tech apprenticeships, right? And Gwyneth was like, that's great for a kind of, entry level, but we really want to think about some other, so I guess for all of you, like, again, this is a big, multifaceted problem. People are approaching it from different efforts. Any thoughts there? I mean, like, around what you think are some of the biggest opportunities? I mean, how do we wrap our heads around, like, what we do? Any thoughts?
I want to just add, so both Michael and I are focused on the 4-year degree attainment, but I think that we all know there are many pathways into tech, and that includes boot camps and certifications and et cetera. But one of the things that we know is that that baseline credential of that baccalaureate degree is what helps those future leaders rise in organizations, or gives them that baseline credential when they want to be entrepreneurs, or gives them that baseline credential when they want to go on and get master's degrees and PhDs and go back and be educators and guidance counselors and all those things that we need for this amazing ecosystem. So again, going back to my data thing, what I don't want to see when all of our corporate partners are touting their diversity numbers in the future, when they have increased exponentially Black and brown people, is that all the Black and brown people are in the bottom rung of the organization. So how do we now, if we're getting Black and brown people in with non-degrees, whether it be apprenticeships or certifications or what have you, how are those organizations then investing in that talent so that it can continue to grow and rise within the organization and not stay at the bottom?
Absolutely, and I think that was why it was yes, but. And I think, it absolutely has to be, and it can't just be one or the other. I think we've seen a huge shift in skills and credentials, and that is 100% really important and something we are very much invested in at Comcast, and investing in the 4-year degree pathways and other opportunities to continue that advancement. And I think it is, again, incumbent upon companies, not just bring folks in the door and say, check, I've done my job, but ensuring that advancement throughout and really investing in leaders at all stages, and that takes intentionality. So,
Great. Any last word before we go to solutions? Or opportunities? Maybe I shouldn't say solutions.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by education being more of an employee benefit across a whole lot of different employers. But I think it's really early. It's just giving people a whole bunch of access to something where they don't actually know what path will work for them or how it's going to get them to the promotion or the upward mobility opportunity. That's not enough. So there needs to be these personalized pathways at scale. I think there's a huge opportunity, and maybe organizations at this conference are going to be part of the solution here, but employers want to see more of their workforce advance to the positions that are most valuable to them. But currently, education as the employee benefit, it's not doing that. It's not something that HR is like, oh, we got X amount coming from this pipeline, it's all good. No, it's more of just leaves that benefit, it's left at CSR. So I am really excited about that potential, which I think also necessarily includes a holistic framework for development. And it's not just, hey, you only need this one skill. To Dwana's point, are there gaps in like reading or writing or communication or soft skills? And so how is the employer helping to make sure, which is in their best interest, that you're actually getting to these levels that are really what you need to do?
Great. So as we kind of switch to some opportunities, I'm wondering if you think that this is an opportune moment. Like, so for example, we talk about kind of the horrific events of 2020. So there's that. We talk about kind of the pandemic, but also lessons of the pandemic, right? Like a lot went online. Also, there's been a lot of investment in racial economic equity. And so is this a moment where we can kind of leverage opportunity maybe in a different way? So I'm trying to contextualize opportunity, and maybe you don't believe that, you don't have to, but I'm just curious, Do you think this is a moment of opportunity? And if so, why not? Michael, you want to start?
Sure. Yes. So schools, right? We try to be a layer inside of computer science programs, and over the past couple of years, a lot of computer science departments, a lot of professors that never really had to change anything for literally decades, suddenly had to change everything, and it created this openness, which still persists, from presidents of universities are trying to reimagine everything. The schools being multiple schools that we're chatting with that want coding to be across all majors, but not because they want everyone to be a software engineer, but they're just thinking of how they can make everybody more prepared to do whatever pathway they're most interested in. We have been getting requests to reimagine career services across entire schools. What do we swap out with what we were doing before? And these are big budgets. And so there's a tremendous openness and opportunity there. On the employer side of things, I've been encouraged to see so many different partnerships with employers, working with different schools, working with types of schools, investing in different HBCUs. I would say that there's also certain challenges because there can be a lot of investment that ends up being in the wrong area, and then people might wrongly assume that something doesn't work, or it wasn't fruitful, or they weren't thoughtful, or maybe they were doing something that ended up being more for PR versus actually investing in a community. So I see that opportunity, and then I'm hoping that there's the organizations that are empowering the right people that are really part of those communities to help to be driving those efforts, as opposed to it being more publicity stunts.
My phrase has been cautiously optimistic. Because, so at Reboot, you heard me say that our mission is that 2025 graduation, and the numbers that we're trying to double, we're measuring zip code 11 from iPads, 2017 is that baseline number. And the class of 2025 are freshmen today. And if you think about what those freshmen have gone through the past 2 years, they were juniors in high school with the pandemic. And most schools got rid of computer science. They were like, I don't know how we're going to do all the rest of this stuff, so that one right there has to go. So computer science went. And as schools were struggling in general to try to figure out balance, we also know that there was great inequity across the country with regards to who had access to what. And even when we give the student this iPad to access school, if they don't have broadband, then it's a paperweight. And so we're still catching up from that. And so as I've been closely watching the iPads numbers, and the numbers are increasing, which makes me cautiously optimistic, they're freshmen today, and they had 2 years of extreme, we all did, trauma, and lack of resources that we know are a foundation to what we need them to have to be successful. So we have work to do, and we have to play catch up to help all of our students that are 2 years behind. But as we look to the future specifically, knowing that if the last 2 years haven't taught us anything, every company is a tech company, everything is a tech component, tech transcends industry. So how do we get foundational and basic skills to all of our students that need them and catch them up so that they can have, as I like to say, a chance at the future?
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is I would say, Michael, to your point about this being a moment, it's a long time coming moment, and a lot has happened over these last couple years, but a lot has happened for a very long time. And so I think ensuring that this moment becomes a movement and continues. There's been tremendous increased investment from a corporate perspective, philanthropy in general, and ensuring that that continues. We all made big commitments to racial equity, Comcast being one of them. That commitment wraps at the end of this year. Are we going to walk away from that commitment? Absolutely not. We will absolutely extend that and have doubled down our commitments. We need all to do the same. I think I'm also super inspired, and so why I'm maybe more maybe more optimistic than cautiously optimistic, just from a funder perspective of just the appetite for collaboration. I mean, I think, and we've seen that a little bit this morning in some of our meetings. You know, I've got colleagues here from other companies where we are how do we do this together? It is not about our brand. It is not about whose label is where, but how do we actually achieve change and drive the impact that we are all trying to invest in and do so collectively? How do we encourage collaborations amongst incredible organizations doing the work and ensure that the funding is available to them to actually execute? And so I'm optimistic by just the appetite I have seen in that area.
So I appreciate that, Gwyneth. I'm going to play devil's advocate, and this is for everyone. So Dwana, is cautiously optimistic. So there are some indicators that kind of maybe warrant caution, right? So after George Floyd was killed, when you did the polling, there were large percentages of people that thought structural racism was a challenge. As time has passed, those polls have gone down. So I guess my question to you all is, what could get in the way of the opportunity we have here? Any thoughts about what we need to, in some ways, manage? What stands in the way of us taking advantage? If this is an opportune moment, what might be standing in our way?
First off, I think the theory of change in the strategy can't rely on people's good intentions. So if you're trying to work with a company and make them change things, and then the only budget you ever get access to is the diversity budget and not the overall talent budget or not the engineering budget or whatnot, you're probably never going to move the needle, because the people who put that budget together, they never intended it to be company-wide, and that's what you actually need to focus on. You need to change it from diversity program to, no, this is just like the core talent strategy. This is how we do things. And so, there's challenges because we try really hard to change how companies are doing things, and we've made some strides. We have Facebook engineering Meta engineering is on our board, and that's allowed certain interesting things that we can test out and try. But you always have to get to the level of influence that is super hard to get to, maybe in a C-suite, because you need these diversity, inclusion, whatever. They have to be a core focus of their long-term, how they see themselves as an organization. They need to see their success long-term as needing to not just try a program one time, but to iterate and collaborate with you to achieve the big, hard goal and to learn along with you. So I would say having the right people in leadership, collaborating with them, really hard from driving that type of systemic change. And I think that looking at also just the landscape of all the different training organizations as well, last week I was chatting with a new social entrepreneur, and he was asking me for advice. And I was really hoping that he would have he was a CTO. But in general, social organizations, there needs to be more of, I would say, understanding what the infrastructure that allows you to get the scale really looks like. Or even if we're thinking about changing a K through 12 classroom, or we're thinking about changing a higher ed classroom, have you designed something that makes it easier for every single educator to be able to adopt what you're doing, to increase the personalization support in their classroom without it being harder? Because a lot of college classrooms, when we want to change something, we say, here's a book of things you need to do. And we're not incentivizing or understanding what the challenges of that educator would be to try to implement that change in their own classroom, let alone hundreds of different classrooms. So, I see that they're good intentions, a lot of will, but some of the boring stuff like the operations, the execution, the technology, the meeting not just the students but also the people trying to help students where they are, I think that's one of the most critical barriers that we need to overcome.
So from the Reboot perspective, so I became CEO October of 2019, and we had 14 founding companies that are part of the coalition, and so tech companies joined the coalition. At various tiered levels, my team regifts that funding to nonprofits that are in alignment with our mission. So I was handed a soft list of companies that were waiting for the CEO to come, and they said, maybe we'll join this thing that is happening with this coalition thing. And so I thought that my job was going to be easy in the sense, that I could call these companies and be like, I'm here now. Would you like to join the coalition? And I was really awakened. And then shortly after that, the world changed. And so I had to shift from trying to recruit companies to how do we support our grantee partners? How do we make sure they're okay? And the coalition has evolved, and I'm thankful for the companies that are strong and have rolled with me. Gwyneth has been amazing with that, in the sense of how I've kind of shifted to really look at how do we make an impact for students. When we started the charge, it was companies aren't doing enough with their philanthropic dollars. And that was the report that we were founded on with regards to what are companies doing. And 32 companies were surveyed, and they were spending 5% of that philanthropic money on women and girls in tech and less than 0.1% on BLNA, women and girls in tech. And so it was, how do we get them to do more? But what was missing from that in the beginning was the fact that the CSR side of the house, or that philanthropic side of the house, needs to also connect with talent acquisition and DEI. All of it needs to work together in order to really move the needle in an organization. And the companies that didn't care about that or didn't get that, maybe not with us at the moment, but companies that got it, roll up their sleeves with me and say, yes, Dwana, how do we continue to make a change? How do we continue to make an impact? What else do you need?
Gwyneth, anything that worries you about?
I mean, a lot worries me. You know, I try to stay fairly optimistic just from the place that I sit, right? I never in a million years thought I'd go in-house at a company, certainly not the cable company. And it has proven to be everything but that, and I think we have an opportunity, we have a moral imperative to really double down our commitments on this work. I'm inspired by the folks on this stage and the work that is being done, and so that's what gives me hope and optimism.
No, absolutely.
So, yeah.
I'm with you on the optimism. I think we have to have it.
Yep.
I think that one of the reasons why it was so compelling to work with all of you is that I think that access to tech and IT, I mean, it's access to the digital economy, which is increasingly the economy, right? We're learning, our commerce, I mean, you know, it's just, if we don't do this, I feel like, population will be left behind. Yeah. I want to end on the future. You know, how are you thinking about the future? We talked about optimism and even cautious optimism, that's okay. But if you look out kind of on the horizon, like what do you see in the future in access for Black learners and workers in digital and IT? We'll go down this way, and we're in the home stretch, so short answers.
Short answers. People want to do more and be better, and I think that's the optimism part. And so whether we're talking about corporations or individuals, I have this weird predicament where I have more mentors than mentees. I have more people saying, yes, how do I help you, than students that even know that the help is available. So I'm excited for the fact that we're slowly starting to change it, and I'm excited for the opportunities that are for these amazing students ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Dwana.
I'm going to kick it to Michael because he's a little more long-winded than I am.
You know, in the future, I think we just need to move more to a personalized education approach. The reason why so many students are dropping out is because they're not doing what the best institutions do, which provide multiple different on-ramps depending on where you are. Instead, it's like, well, here's the level. Did you pass or did you not? Oh, that's your fault. You know, instead of with the multiple pathways approach, then it's about being smarter and more intentional about helping to guide each of those next steps. Whether you're talking about 2-year, 4-year colleges and universities, whether you're talking about employee training at scale, then that personalized approach is the way that you're able to increase, you know, there's confidence, there's the sense of belonging, there's the right skills at the right time. And if you could imagine the best educational experience you've ever had, maybe it was an incredible teacher, maybe you had a tutor, maybe you had a mentor, they're doing exactly what is possible, but we haven't yet designed effectively around. So my vision for the future of education feels more personalized. It feels more like a relationship that you're building that's meeting you where you are, when you need it. Yes, there's high expectations. It's also very, very supportive as well. And it evolves and changes as you need it to evolve and change. That's what I say there.
That's awesome.
Michael, do you want to say 2 seconds about your work
Well,
and the future of what you're working on here?
What I will say is that the Racial Economic Equity Initiative at JFF right now is focused on increasing access for Black learners and workers in digital and IT. And you can learn about this work and the work that we've done together. We just published a scan with some amazing organizations that are doing really great work, have some good data and promising approaches for increasing access and success. So that's on our website, jff.org. And we've also worked with the advisory committee to create what we call a call to action. And so it's a framework that addresses some of the barriers and opportunities and makes some recommendations around actions and including policy recommendations. So you can learn more about all of it. So we're out of time. Got to say thank you and enjoy.